All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Securing the Digital Future, Automation and Crypto Agility for a Quantum Safe Enterprise. Today's webinar is sponsored by DigiCert and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name's Jess Steinbach with Actual Tech Media by Future B2B. And I'm very happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation because the rise of digital business has created an opportunity for growth and scalability for a lot of us, but it has also created an evolving and extremely complex digital environment. Organizations, probably like yours, are often balancing legacy systems with new tools, also managing vast amounts of data across a wide variety of cloud infrastructures, all while threat actors have made security and defense planning more important than ever. So today, we're going to explore together, we're going to unpack a little bit of what digital trust is, and why it's important, why you should be thinking about it. With the help of our expert presenters, we will learn how crypto agility, automation, and quantum safe encryption can become your keys to streamlining operations, to maintaining compliance, that's an important one, and best of all, securing your defenses while you do all of these important things. So all of that and more coming at us very quickly here, but I am going to zip through a few housekeeping points and then I will get this show on the road. Let's start out with our little tour of your audience console, as per usual, a nice guided tour of your audience console. I want to draw your attention as we get started here over to the questions tab on the console, because the best part of a webinar like this one is the chance to ask questions directly of the expert presenters we have here with us. And they are going to take some audience Q&A at the end. So there is lots of time to get those questions in today. And I know this topic is going to incite a lot of sparkly questions for all of you out there. So make sure you get those questions in. If you haven't already done it, you can give a little test run right now. Give us a hi, give us a hello. Let us know what's going on in your week today. I see Gilbert out there and Jorge and Andrew and Vrej. We got Greg with us. We got a whole awesome crew. Keep those highs and hellos coming. Let us know how you're doing. We want to hear from you. And then make sure that you get those questions in, comments, stories, general thoughts and ideas, whatever's in your brain, we want to be hearing from you. Now, that window is also where you can reach out to our team if you do have any technical issues. Hopefully that does not come up, knock on wood. But if there's an issue with a slide not advancing or audio, something like that, the first thing you're going to try is a browser refresh. I promise that will clear out most of the usual tech gremlins. But if you try that browser refresh and it doesn't work, just shoot us a message in that questions tab and the ATM crew will be there to help you out. All right, now while you're exploring the questions tab, let's go one tab over and we're going to look at the handouts section. It's right there next, side by side there. You know, you're going to find some really exciting content and resources to take away after we wrap up our webinar. So make sure you've got those open. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole with them yet because we have a webinar in front of us, but I promise you'll want to spend a little time with those resources after we finish our conversation today. So make sure you've got those handouts ready to rock after we wrap here. Now, it's not just awesome content that we're giving away today. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card that we will give away as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here in live attendance in order to qualify to win that prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you are not sure what those T's and C's are, no problem. We have them all listed for you in that handy dandy handouts tab that we were just chatting about. So you can head on back over to the handouts tab, click in, scroll down, and you will find the full terms and conditions waiting for you there. All right, well, speaking of good stuff, let's get into our presentation. I am so excited to introduce you all to our expert presenters here with us today. We've got Dean Coughlin, Senior Director of Digital Trust at DigiCert, and Jennifer Glenn, Regional Director of IDC. I am very excited to listen in on this, what I'm sure will be a fascinating conversation, Dean and Jennifer. So I am going to hand things over to you. Dean, take it away.
Webinar titled Securing the Digital Future, Automation and Crypto Agility for a Quantum Safe Enterprise. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dean Coughlin, and I'm the Senior Director and Trust Specialist here at DigiCert. And I'm being joined today by an esteemed guest, Jennifer Glenn from IDC, for today's discussion. So we're going to be discussing Jennifer's recently published white paper called The Evolution of Digital Business Dictates a Modern Crypto Landscape, and digging into some of the key findings from this report. So Jennifer is the Research Director for the IDC Security and Trust Group and is responsible for the information and data security practice. But Jennifer, it would be great to have you give us a little more background on yourself, please.
All right, thanks, Dean. So I'm Jennifer Glenn. I am a research director with IDC. I cover information and data security, which is a pretty broad coverage of technologies. It covers everything from data loss prevention and data access governance to encryption, key management, and certificates. I've been with IDC for almost 3 years at this point, but I've spent most of my career in cybersecurity. So I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. We're actually very excited to have you with us today. So we have an action-packed agenda for you today. First, I'm going to ask Jennifer to give us an overview of the digital trust space and why it's important. She'll share a little bit about what crypto agility is and how to get started being crypto agile, and what organizations can expect from getting this whole process underway. Then Jennifer and I will discuss these items in more detail and share some real-world stories with you. And lastly, we'll wrap up with some information on what DigiCert is doing to help organizations implement crypto agility, and we'll go from there and answer your questions. So Jennifer, I'm going to hand it off to you to get us started.
Sounds great. All right, well, let's just open with this slide here. And I think it's, as Dean mentioned, I want to start off by defining what digital trust is. In this role, I hear a lot of vendors, a lot of users talk about digital trust. It gets tossed around a lot. And so I wanted to start off this meeting just drawing a line in the sand to talk about what digital trust really is. So when we think about digital business, it relies on data to power our websites, our software, and our devices, all of the things that we use every day. But in order for that data to be securely shared, the connections between these entities all have to be validated for authenticity and legitimacy. And not only that, right, the data has to be unviewable. It has to be only viewable by the correct devices and reach its correct destination. And I know this audience is very familiar with the tools used for all of this, right? Encryption, cryptographic keys, identities, all of these things wrapped into these digital certificates. And I think where it gets sort of confusing is, this definition maybe gets a little bit confused with zero trust, especially when we talk about keeping things inaccessible or unviewable. But, this isn't quite right. I would even hazard to say that digital trust is really the end result of zero trust, right? It's the ability to not only build a critical data infrastructure with integrity and security, but that ability to demonstrate that integrity to users. And ultimately, this gives your users, not only your customers, but your suppliers, your partners, and employees, the confidence to do business with you. These tools provide that solid foundation for digital business to build your trust, to build confidence that the right data is being shared and used by the right devices and the right users. And without that validation, without the validation offered by these tools, your consumers, your partners, they cannot and perhaps shouldn't simply trust the organizations they're doing their business with, right? I mean, without confirming a web server is legitimate, how do you trust the data that's being offered? Without verifying device-to-device connections, how do you trust that the correct data is being routed to the appropriate device? So I think, that really is how I define digital trust, right? It's this ability to give your users confidence in the digital infrastructure you're providing. So when I think about enterprise organizations, and I'd certainly be curious for this group how you're dealing with this, but when I talk to different enterprise users, they're really talking about how challenging it is to build that trust into their systems. And our research indicates that most organizations are digitally native. Over 50% in our recent survey, so 53% in our recent survey said that they were either mostly digital native or completely digital native, which means that they're deriving their value, their they're offering their devices, their availability, all of the value creation that's coming from these organizations is done through a digital business. And what this is really translating to make it a big challenge is a really high volume of data that has to be available when it's needed, where it's needed, and in a lot of different connections that all need management, they all need security. And not only do you have more, you have a higher breadth, a different types of connections that need different levels of security and have different types of compliance regulations and requirements to them. And, again, the availability, the criticality of availability just can't be understated here. And I think that's really where I'm hearing a lot of challenges. This is one of the top trends I'm hearing is how do I make sure that I'm building the infrastructure in the right way and doing it so that I am building that confidence for my organizations. And then the next piece that comes into play with this group when I'm talking to them is post-quantum and post-quantum encryption specifically. Because this is, obviously is coming into your connections and whether or not that encryption can be broken by quantum computers. And back in March, we asked organizations about their plans for implementing quantum safe cryptography. I have to say I was a bit surprised. Nearly 11% of the respondents were already implementing some form of quantum safe encryption. Another 24%, they had plans within the next year. So it is something that we are seeing a lot of. We are actually seeing some pickup here. So I will say what I did notice separately is, where this may be coming from is that maybe it's coming from vendors who are adding the support into their tools, which is definitely helpful. What I did notice, and I thought might be important, especially when we're talking about modernizing your crypto infrastructure, is that when we asked this question about post-quantum, we were asking, if you're not doing this, why are you not planning to do it? Why is quantum cryptography not a justifiable expense for your organization right now? Why are you not planning it? And the primary reason for most of the respondents was just an inability to justify the cost. So 36% cited an inability to justify that cost. Another 24% didn't see the need for it. And I would say another quarter just didn't know where to start. There was some discussion of lack of standards. And I think with the NIST release of the quantum encryption standards back in August, I think this is likely to boost some more focus in this area. But I think what's important when we talk about this inability to justify post-quantum cryptography is not focusing on just post-quantum cryptography. Crypto agility is a much more encompassing initiative that not only helps with post-quantum cryptography, but also can provide a number of other benefits to your enterprise. So I want to talk about that a little bit further. And I know Dean and I are going to talk about some real world examples, but let's just talk about what crypto agility really means. Okay, so crypto agility is what gives businesses the opportunity to quickly adapt and switch cryptographic parameters or methods, without having to go through a major infrastructure overhaul. And I think from that perspective, it's pretty clear to see how this benefits quantum computing, but implementing this can help address a shortened certificate lifecycle or address certificate revocations and a number of other things. So let's talk about how to do it. And I think the first piece, and I'm sure that many of you struggle with this. This is a common thing that I hear, is this need for visibility. So the root of crypto agility is visibility. The same concept as any security. You can't protect what you can't see. And this starts with a comprehensive inventory of the certificates from across your business, including IT, your product teams, and all of the context that goes along with those certificates, such as the ownership, the life cycle, the compliance, the standards that go with it. And then when you look at that, next you have to align that with your business. And I think this really goes back to that post-quantum challenge that we talked about, which is, that inability to justify. And with post-quantum cryptography and this framework that we've identified here, the really key piece after you get the visibility that you need is aligning it with the goals of your business. Prioritizing your resources, your budget. And I know a lot of organizations we talk to, service availability is a pretty key metric. So with the visibility that you get from the inventory, this is a lot easier to address and report once you've actually seen everything. So that really is a key piece. If you can align it with the goals of your business, you have the justification for doing all of these things right there. The next piece that, again, I'm really excited to talk to Dean about this a little bit more, but I want to go over the whole framework. But that centralizing visibility and management is what makes it so much easier to continuously maintain your inventory and track against those goals. So once you allow your organization to see where certain information is missing and put your business at risk, you can quickly address it. You can put in automation, you have the tools to reach out to the right people to make the changes. It's just much easier to address any sort of vulnerabilities or issues. And then the fourth piece, of course, is measurement. Because every initiative you have to demonstrate your success, right? It goes back to justifying the cost of anything that you're doing. So I still get a lot of calls about certificate outages. This seems to be something that organizations are still really struggling with. I think if you can take this sort of centralized management, this framework, and be able to demonstrate the number of outages that were prevented, this is a very powerful metric that you could put in place with this framework. And then finally, this last stage of the framework, and is probably pretty familiar with anybody who's done any agile development, right? It's adjustment. It's being able to look at all of your tools, look at all of the certificates that you have and all of that information, determine the vulnerabilities, determine where you have challenges, and be able to make adjustments to your processes, to your automation that make it easier to manage these in the future. You can not only reduce, not only help with the management, but reduce any redundancies, implement automation, and in general, just make things more secure. Since crypto agility is a framework, right? It's an approach that makes key initiatives like automation easier and more attainable. It's one thing we have to talk about what those benefits are. The ability to automate offers a number of benefits. I mean, I think key to this would be time and cost savings. And later on in this discussion, I know Dean has some examples to share of how organizations are able to quantify these benefits that we can share with you. But automating digital trust operations like certificate management allows for scalable authentication, which is much more instrumental for workplace flexibility. And additionally, as we mentioned, preparing for post-quantum threats. So the ability to be quantum safe, to demonstrate quantum safe initiatives to your customers, to your partners, is really key. And it's a lot easier to do that with that crypto agility framework in place. And then finally, one of the things we hear about so often, and I just remember, a conversation I had with a CISO about, compliance and how challenging it was. And one of the things that he brought up was time and just how tedious it is to adhere to compliance requirements and audits. So with this crypto agility framework, it's much easier to do those checks and balances on your audits. I mean, anytime you can take auditing and shrink the time that people are spending there, I think you're in a really good position. So with that, I am going to pause and hand it back off to Dean.
Great. Thank you so much for that overview. As you were talking, I was jotting down some notes because a lot of things you said resonated in my mind with things I've had discussions with customers. One of the things you said is when you talked about what digital trust is, you mentioned the word confidence. And excuse me, that's the word I use a lot when I define digital trust with our customers. Excuse me. I always say to them, when they say, what is digital trust? I said, digital trust is what gives me the ability to have confidence in doing things like transactions online, downloading software that I know is secure, sending an email and making sure that the recipient knows it's from me and that the data is encrypted in transit. All of these things are examples of digital trust, and that confidence word that you said really, I think, resonates with that definition. You also talked about visibility. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about quantum, because visibility, as you said, you can't protect what you don't know if you don't know what you have. Many people think they know what they have. And I've come into many organizations where they say, well, yeah, we know what we've got. Don't worry about that. And then we do some discovery and we find out that they don't really know what they have. So these are topics that I think we'll explore in more detail as we move along here.
Yes.
But let's jump into your report a little bit. The evolution of digital business dictates a modern crypto landscape. The report opens up with a header that says, good encryption is essential for effective security. Crypto agility is essential for effective encryption. So the second part of that statement is interesting. Crypto agility is essential for effective encryption. What is crypto agility? What do you mean by that? And why is it essential?
Yeah, I mean, well, in earlier when I talked about it, I said crypto agility is this approach where you can switch between your cryptographic algorithms. So encryption is something that, obfuscates your data, and if that encryption can be broken, your data, your connections can be compromised. And so from a post-quantum perspective, it's really important to be able to switch to a much stronger encryption once these powerful computing algorithms are here. But the key challenge is being able to do that quickly and easily. And I think some of the challenge with updating encryption standards are just that it usually requires a strong or a pretty significant overhaul of your infrastructure, which I think makes a lot of people nervous, right? And so if you can put a process in place for making that much easier to switch between these algorithms or these methods, you don't necessarily have to make it such an onerous initiative.
Yeah, interesting. So do you think that these crypto agile processes help with any other challenges that organizations may be dealing with, especially with respect to like multi-cloud or legacy infrastructure environments?
Yeah, they do. Obviously, we talked about quantum cryptography, but certainly enterprises are a hybrid of multiple types of infrastructure, right? They have different clouds, on-premises infrastructure, and is still very much in use. And this leads to just a high volume of certificates in circulation just to keep the organization running optimally. Right. And by centralizing your certificates and understanding the context about those certificates in that sort of centralized process that we talked about in that framework, you make it much easier to address the life cycle of these certificates. And I know a lot of organizations are, like Google and some of and Amazon are shortening the life cycle of their certificates to increase security. And so if you need to make those switches or update your life cycle and understand these shortened timeframes, knowing what you have and all of the information about those certificates is really, really important. Some of the other things I think that are important are certificate sprawl, right? In the same vein as high volume, just simply the usage of these certificates. I mean, there are organizations all over the business. You have the, for lack of a better term, front of the house certificates, your websites and things where you're connecting with customers. But you also have, the back of the house, your products and the things that you are building. And a lot of times what I find is that customers really aren't getting a view of all of their certificate landscape, right? They may have a good handle on one, but maybe not on the other side. And so if you can sort of bring all of that together, you have a much better picture of your overall security. So that's another thing. And then the other piece, that I think is really should be stated is overall staffing. One of the things we hear about in security is just this lack of skilled staff, right? It's in the security space. This is pretty well known and talked about quite a bit. But at the same time, I think we're also seeing right now an overall reduction in staff in most organizations, and sometimes I think certificate management sometimes just gets handed down, and you don't always get experts who are running your cryptography anymore. It gets handed down to somebody else if there's a reduction in force or something like that. And when that happens, you lose processes, you lose the ability to understand where things are. So if you've put these processes in place and you have sort of documented framework, it makes it much easier for someone to come in with a much lower skill set, but also someone with much less time that can dedicate to managing all of these certificates. So again, it's just getting a better view of your landscape so you can manage it much, much, much easier.
Yeah, certainly, cryptography, I think all IT experts know about cryptography, but certainly when you get down into the weeds, there are experts that have studied for many, many more years and have that as a specialty. And those are the people that are getting hard to find. And as you say, when they turn over, you've got to find somebody quickly to replace them. Yeah. So you talked about crypto agile framework, multi-stage approach. Let's dive into this a little bit more. Maybe we focus on the why. What's important about security hygiene, and why is it listed first?
We listed it first simply because it's fundamental. The biggest recurring theme that I hear when I have conversations with users, with security practitioners in general, is a lack of visibility. They don't know what data they have. They don't know what certificates they're responsible for until it's too late. I know, Dean, you and I talked about this when we were preparing. There are certificate outages all over the place. And I know when I have conversations with organizations about what happens when you have a certificate outage? Usually it's like, oh, well, we try not to let our hair on fire, but then, we have to run around and find out who owns it, who's the owner, what do we have to do to get it up and running again? And it just takes a lot of extra time. Right. So understanding that task of inventorying your crypto assets, it's not easy because of the volume and the sprawl that we spoke about. But, it really is ideal to have a view of everything. And obviously, I think, one thing I want to be clear when I say you want to have that view of everything, and obviously having an inventory of all of your crypto assets would be amazing. I do think sometimes as security practitioners, sometimes they tend to put too much pressure on themselves to do everything all at once. And I think, again, we want to make sure it's progress, not perfection. So I think you have to be beneficial, at minimum, get the comprehensive inventory of the most crucial operational assets that you have in your organization as your baseline, and work up from there. So that would be, why I would have that first, of course. But again, that inventory is so important because once you have that, it becomes easier to do the rest. You can make that plan. You can prioritize your vulnerabilities that you need to fix. Figure out what's the most important to your business. What are the operational areas that you need to work on? What projects can you measure and show your value to the organization? And you need to have that hygiene first. Even for reporting and adjustments, right? These to me are essential, but you can only do that once you have a good view of what you have. Right. So, Dean, I'm curious to hear from you. Which of these do you see as the most challenging for the customers that you're talking to?
Well, I think they're all challenging, but to start off, I think people discount the visibility piece. As I just mentioned earlier, I think a lot of folks think they already have good visibility into their environment. And I remember a recent customer visit where, they thought they had everything under control. They knew where their certificates were. We ran a scan with their permission, and they were amazed at what we discovered. There were certificates on internal servers in the lab. There was some shadow IT groups standing up things. There were locations around the world that they had forgotten about. And so it was a very eye-opening thing to show them this list on what was in their inventory. Maybe it's not the most challenging, but it's certainly an eye-opening challenge or result. I would say, the most challenging is figuring out how to automate it so that they can become more agile. There's a lot of legacy systems that don't really lend themselves to automation. They have to use third-party tools to make them automate more easily. And that's where these tools are very important. And that's where people that have expertise in running these systems, expertise with the cryptography, as we said earlier, and just being able to integrate that with these legacy systems is extremely important. So I think we've talked about what organizations should be doing, and I'm sure many are wondering, what are the benefits here? Could you share some of these key benefits? Why should organizations be doing this?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I did go through some of these earlier, and I do still think that time and cost savings is huge. Again, anytime you can save time with compliance and addressing audits is really going to be a critical measurement for not only the business, but from a personal standpoint, right? I know so many of the CISOs or the compliance organizations that are not compliance organizations, but the individuals that are responsible for compliance, when they get this audit, they're just looking at this daunting list of things that they need to go find. And it just is like separate from their day job. So again, I think time and cost savings are really a key benefit. And so since I talked about most of these, I again would love to hear from you. I mean, I know you engage with customers a lot at DigiCert. So what have you heard from them? What are the cost and time savings benefits that you've heard? Like, what can the customers on here expect to see?
Yeah, definitely. So, like as I said, I've been around for a while, and I think when I started in this history in the 90s, I think we were using stone tablets and chisels. And actually, no, it was more like Excel spreadsheets and pagers. People would have alerts when certificates were going to expire. They would send alerts to a pager so that somebody had 10, 15, 20 days to replace that certificate and get it installed before it expired. Clearly, that is not going to work with certificate lifetimes decreasing. As you mentioned, there's initiatives afloat to do that. And let's say we had 90-day lifetimes of certificates. There's no way that spreadsheets and pagers or IMs are going to work in that environment. So in the 2020s, automation is king. You have to have automation, and not just for replacing these certificates, but also to have this crypto agility that you mentioned. When people are going to transition now to post-quantum cryptography, they're not going to be able to do that by installing certificates one at a time. Very similar to what we had last decade with the SHA-1 transition to SHA-2. Many weren't prepared for that. Many had to staff up to be able to do that. And now, as you said, in the face of declining IT budgets and staff and personnel, they're not going to be able to do that with those personnel. They're going to need to do automation. And the reality is that many customers I talk to have experienced certificate outages for one reason or another. It could be an expired certificate. It could be a certificate that was misconfigured. And if it's a website that is doing, like, say, e-commerce, that is going to cost a lot of money, because when that website's down, you can't take orders. And that's a call from the CFO is going to be making a call to find out, why didn't we get revenue this day, this month, this quarter? And then you've got loyalty issues for customers. Customers who can't transact with your website, whether it's to make a purchase or to call and get information, or to look up information on your website, and the website's down. All of that is going to impact your revenue. So the loyalty issues are very important. And lastly, I think compliance is an area that is frequently overlooked, but you mentioned it before, and it is important, especially in industries that are regulated, like, for example, financial and healthcare, government. Compliance is a must. And so making sure you have agility and making sure that all of the things you said in your report are top of mind are especially important from a compliance perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, time is one of the most important things, and I think of it's time is something you never get back. So the more time you can give to your customers, and the more time you can give to yourself is the better. And I know this is something that the security team is struggling with. And then the other piece, obviously, quantum readiness is important too. And I think will become a part of compliance at some later stage as well. And it's just one more thing that organizations need to do. And hopefully it's not falling to the bottom of the list of behind other priorities, but it is something that also needs to be addressed. And with this framework can be addressed fairly easily.
So lastly, I just want to wrap up saying, on that note, do organizations see PKI modernization as key to their business strategy and growth plans for the future? Are they continuing to make investments in this or other areas of technology?
There are definitely competing priorities, right, for this sort of budget and this sort of initiative. But again, I do hear very regularly that certificate outages and the need for better management from these users and the ability to understand that is still really important, because I think you sort of addressed this earlier, which is, if a customer facing system goes down or a revenue generating system goes down, what are you going to do? You're not making any money. So definitely that is a top concern where our companies are really putting their investments, right? And I think as organizations continue to broaden their infrastructure, to either create more opportunities, more customer-facing things, that problem is just going to continue to grow. So it absolutely needs to be a strategic investment.
Cool. Well, this has been a really enlightening discussion. Thanks again for this, Jennifer. And as I was saying, the conversations we're having with customers every day are around PKI modernization, which is essentially what we're calling future-proofing with DigiCert. So I have a few slides today from our sponsor, DigiCert, here to talk about what we mean by future-proofing and building on the research that Jennifer has done. Let's talk a little bit about the crypto agility, which Jennifer covered very well. I think we know now why crypto agility is important, but now we have standards from NIST. And in the past, I had talked to many customers about moving to post-quantum, and they said, well, we don't have standards yet. Okay, that excuse is no longer valid, because now NIST has come out with these quantum safe algorithms, as Jennifer mentioned back in August. But these might change again. There are standards today, but standards do change in the future. And so therefore, we have to have that agility built into our systems in order to make that change if necessary. So to get to crypto agility, we have to figure out first, again, what crypto assets do we have? So that's the discovery step. And then once we do the discovery, then we can start managing that crypto and making sure that we have the ability to manage that crypto. We have access to that crypto and we can get to it and do what we need to do. And then we need to automate it so that it can be agile. Again, we can't use the pagers and the spreadsheets to do that. We have to have it automated so that then we can deploy upgrades and certificates that are safe from quantum computers. So in the vein of this, we had a World Quantum Readiness Day last month, and we conceived this to spotlight the importance of quantum preparedness. So we're supporting a collaborative approach to foster a quantum resilient future. By aligning with industry leaders and leveraging collective expertise, we aim to lead a comprehensive shift towards quantum readiness, mitigating risk and ensuring continued security in the digital landscape. So on this inaugural day, we had 1,700 people live worldwide for over 2.5 hours, engaging in discussions and listening to really interesting presentations from industry leaders and pioneers in this area. The sessions are still available to view today, so you can go to this website, digicert.com/world-quantum-readiness-day. Very, very interesting. I would encourage you to take a moment and watch some of those videos to hear what the industry experts had to say. As part of that, we also had our first DigiCert Quantum Readiness Award winner. And the winner of our first annual award was Cloudflare. And the reason for this was because Cloudflare's journey towards post-quantum cryptography started with experimentations back in 2017. So they were really ahead of the curve. And they wanted to deploy advanced algorithms to their services, and they did that in 2022. So today they're providing broad post-quantum encryption for free by default across their products and services to help their customers secure their websites, APIs, cloud tools, and other remote employees against these potential future threats. Now, these finalists and this final award was selected by an expert panel of judges, including Blair Canavan from Thales, a good friend of mine that I've known for about 20 years, Tim Hollebeek from DigiCert, my colleague here, Dr. Ali Karfarani from PQ Shield, he's the CEO, Bill Newhouse from NIST, who I work with quite frequently, Alan Schimmel, the CEO of TechStrong, a reporter and a guy that's just a fun person to talk to and has a lot of expertise in the tech field. And of course, Hugh Thompson, who's the chairman of the RSA conference. All of these folks evaluated all the applicants and came up with Cloudflare as our winner. We also had finalists of Migros, DXC as part of the total package here. So very, very much congratulations to those folks. So from a DigiCert perspective, we've integrated the road to crypto agility in our whole product suite, but specifically for enterprise trust, we have our Trust Lifecycle Manager, which has quantum safe algorithms specifically for enterprise trust built in to its platform. And when I talk about the Trust Lifecycle Manager, this is a product which is composed of two components: the Certificate Lifecycle Manager, which helps do the discovery, the management, and the automation, and provides the visibility into your certificate inventory. And this helps reduce the risk of business disruptions due to an expired or misconfigured certificate. And we have the second component called PKI Services, which allows you to create subordinate CAs, issuing CAs, and all the certificate profiles you might need for any of your needs. So with that, I want to thank you all again for attending today's webinar. We now have about 15 minutes left for the Q&A. I see a few questions have already come in, but feel free to keep adding more in the chat. So let's start with our first question. Okay, so the first one is, are TLS certificate lifetimes really going to come down? And is there a hard and fast date? We've heard Chrome intends to reduce certificate lifetimes to 90 days, but when will that happen? I guess I'll take that one, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Because this comes up a lot in the conversations I've had with customers, and I regularly deal with the Chrome team as part of the CA Browser Forum. So I can tell you this: they have put out a roadmap for their future plans around certificates. The last item on that roadmap is their goal for 90-day certificate validity periods. They have not set any dates for that goal. I repeat, there are no dates. Despite what you may have heard out there in periodicals or from our competitors, there are absolutely no dates. And in fact, I asked this question at the CA Browser Forum meeting in Seattle recently. And they specifically said, no, we do not have a date. It's our long-term goal. And when you look at their list of goals, they have 8 bullet points, and this is the last one. So they have a lot of other things that they want to get to before the 90-day certificates. So I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. In fact, if I had to put a prediction together, I would say this would not even be a ballot before late 2025. Now that could change, but that's where it is today. Hopefully that answers that question. The next one I see is, we built a homegrown solution for managing our certificates. We'd like to move to something commercial. Should we keep these side by side? Well, look, there's pros and cons to developing a homegrown solution to do this. I think from my perspective, the downside to that is you've built it yourself, you're maintaining it yourself. That means you have to update it yourself. And as we said earlier, people come and go. And so being able to hand down that development work and the maintenance of that work is going to be something that is going to become more difficult as time goes on. There are third parties that do this for a living. They're experts that run these own tools to manage your certificates. And so why build it yourself and maintain it yourself? Why not just let someone else do that for you, like you do with many of the other tools that you use? So I think that's the primary reason in my mind why you should outsource this type of functionality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks again for joining us today. I really want to thank my guest, Jennifer Glenn from IDC, for talking a little bit more about digital trust. And we look forward to continuing discussions with you and with IDC in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you both so much for that really interesting conversation. Thanks for sticking around to answer some questions from our audience. Now, I know that we had to cut that a little bit short. We wish we could keep going. I know, and there's a lot of questions in here. It's really fascinating stuff. And some of it is really new and stuff that we're just getting into and starting to explore. So what we're going to do is make sure that all the questions that you've asked, all the questions that we haven't got to, are sent to the DigiCert team. So you will get a response back from Dean and his crew. So make sure you're getting those questions in. If they're still kind of lingering in your brain and you haven't gotten them into the questions window yet, now is the time. If you have gotten your question in already, you will get a response back, I promise you. So stay tuned for that. All right, and another way that you can learn a little bit more right away is to visit that handout section of your webinar console. Make sure you've got those links open, spend some time exploring. You can learn more about Trust Lifecycle Manager, how to reduce disruption with full lifecycle management. This is gonna, again, we're getting into that visibility, that control over your entire certificate landscape. And this is going to allow you to stay ahead of some of those issues and things that could cause service disruption. So make sure you've got that link open. There's also a white paper, Modernize your PKI for security, efficiency, and agility. And you can really get into a little bit more around what we just heard from Dean. Spend some time exploring how PKI can bring your entire ecosystem under control in order to address some of the problems around inflexibility, inefficiency, and, as they say, ironically, insecurities that could possibly be there. So make sure you snag that white paper. And then there's an IDC report by Jennifer. So that is a great follow-up to the conversation we just got to listen in on with Dean and Jennifer. The evolution of digital business dictates a modern crypto landscape. So if you wanted to learn a little bit more about that modern crypto landscape that Jennifer was explaining to us, you can get that IDC report right there in your handouts tab, download, and make sure you spend a little bit of time with that after we wrap. These are all fantastic ways to carry the conversation that we've had already forward and keep digging in a little bit more on your own. All right, now before we head out for the day, I have one more little bit of fun to add to an already awesome day. It is time for a prize giveaway. Now, a reminder that you do need to be here live and present at the webinar in order to win. Today's winner of a $250 Amazon gift card is Jason Fowler from Pennsylvania. Jason Fowler of Pennsylvania. Congratulations to you, Jason. Now, as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap up the webinar. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank DigiCert for making this webinar possible. A big thank you to Dean and to Jennifer. I see some comments coming in about how much you all enjoyed the conversation today. I did too. Really fascinating. Like I said, kind of some neat new takes on things and really interesting to explore digital trust from that perspective. So I hope that you're feeling lit up and excited and ready to learn a little bit more in your own lives. You've got those handouts. You're carrying this forward into your day. You're going to talk everybody's ears off as you head out into your living room or office space, wherever you're working from right now. And I want to thank all of you for making that time in your day to come and be a part of this wonderful, wonderful webinar with me here. I have really enjoyed chatting with you all. Thanks for getting some great questions in. And as I said, you'll get some responses back to those as well. Well, with that, I'm going to leave things here for the day. I hope that you will join me again for a webinar again soon. I would love to see all of you join us for another conversation. Thanks, Dalton. I see you there. Thanks for joining us. And until I get to see all of you again, well, I hope you have absolutely beautiful ends to your day. Thanks all.